Value is so much of a mystery for every company. Some companies get closer than others at understanding what their value is, but there's often a gap and sometimes a significant gap.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the solvable relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is one of the luminaries in pricing, Paul Hunt. Here are three things you want to know about Paul before we start. He founded Pricing Solutions. It's a pricing consulting firm in 1993. He grew it and sold it 23 years later. Wow. In 2013, he wrote the book World Class Pricing, The Journey. And one of my favorite things, he's now teaching mindfulness. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Hey, how did you get into pricing?
Yeah, so in 1988, actually, I joined a consulting firm that specialized in marketing. And I got involved in a couple projects that had a pricing slant to them. And I really enjoyed them a lot. And then I started doing some training on pricing. The American Management Association did a 2-day pricing course. And I got brought on as a teacher to do that. And then it just one thing led to another. That led to a bunch of pricing projects. And then I thought, wow, this is a lot of fun. I'm going to keep going with this. And then, 25 years later, or whatever number of years, here we are.
Many, many years, yeah. So why did you stick with pricing? Because there's so many fields you could go into.
Yeah, I loved it. I find pricing is a disguised word for value. And you mentioned that at the beginning. And so value is so, much of a mystery for every company. Some companies get closer than others at understanding what their value is. But there's often a gap and sometimes a significant gap between the company's understanding of value and what the customer perceives as value or what they understand as value. So I really loved that mystery, Mark, and I loved engaging in that mystery and trying to help clients solve that and help clients get a lot closer to the bullseye.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is your pricing problem is not your price, it's value.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
And it amazes me how few people actually understand what value is, what it means, and yet it's so important to their business. So,
yeah, I think they live and breathe it, but they're almost so close to it that they just can't see it all that clearly at times, and so that's why they need an outside perspective occasionally. And they've got a company because they've built value, they've delivered value, they do know value in a sense. But at the same time, nobody's perfect. And
absolutely.
Yeah, there's lots to learn, and the gap can get quite wide at times. And particularly for new products, we do a lot of innovation work. So trying to figure out what is the value of innovation is huge. When there's competitive disruption, deregulation, all sorts of kind of things where the market has changed in some significant way, the consumer's changed in some significant way. It's really hard to have your bearings, and to know where am I and what's changed and what is my worth, and this new competitor that's come up with this new innovation, what does that mean to me?
Yeah.
And so, it's the dynamics have changed, and it's very exciting. So yeah, that got me super interested and has kept me going for 30 years.
Yeah, it almost seems, and I hadn't even had this thought until you started talking about this. You've heard the saying, a fish doesn't know what water is.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's almost like you take a successful company, and they've been successful because they were solving real market problems and they were adding a ton of value.
Yeah.
But they didn't really know what value meant. They just knew they were doing good things for their customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as things start to change, it's like, well, this is what water feels like.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the value was you used to create, and now here's how it's changed. So.
Yeah, Absolutely. And all of a sudden I'm not as relevant as I was, or some competitor has, out innovated me, or, there's been some external change that, the consumers' needs have changed, and all of a sudden what was primary to them is, and what we had is now secondary. And yeah, it's unsettling, but that's the life of business. If you don't like unsettling, don't go into business, because that's the way it is. It's constantly kind of unsettle you in a way.
Exactly right. So over the course of 23, 25, 30 years, what has changed in pricing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. To me, there was one of the most significant changes was the shift in the power of procurement. So in the 90s, procurement was a bureaucratic backwater that just signed paper and brought product in, and that was it. That changed when we got into delayering and kind of getting lean and things like that, and then companies really figuring out, hey, I can cut my costs if I negotiate much better, if I bring a professional procurement function. And so many of our clients all of a sudden found themselves totally ill-equipped to deal with procurement teams that were there and really professionally organized. Their sales teams weren't used to it. They were into relationship selling. They weren't challenging their customers, things like that. So the whole procurement shift was really a dramatic kind of change. And then, of course, the sea change we've gone through in technology, right? So it's just a different world now. Subscription pricing is the norm for many, many industries and products. That was not the case at all. So that shift, the move to e-commerce and the web, and every company at some level is playing a digital game. And so how do I price in that digital environment? So those are the two big changes that come to mind when I reflect over my career.
Yeah, the whole procurement thing is fascinating because companies really do want to have these relationship sales. And I think even the buying company wants to have a relationship. But then they throw in this person called procurement who just tries to blow up the relationship as much as possible and say, let's get the best deal we can possibly get.
Right, exactly. And often they're not representing the company's best interests. There are other parties, but our salespeople have often lost contact with those customers either through the buying process or, they've leaned out themselves and they're not spending time there with their customers, really understanding what their value is. So, yeah, it's a really tough game. And procurement, there's many procurement organizations that share facts, but they're a very limited set of facts, and the facts are not necessarily portraying an accurate picture of what's going on. So, sales teams really have to be careful. The whole concept of the challenger sale is certainly a major evolution in selling. Selling was very much kind of Neil Rackham on spin selling, which was situation, problem, implication, need, payoff, much more relationship-based stuff like that. But really the shift to the challenger sale, and then the book that was written about the challenger sale, and showing that, the salespeople that really succeed in a procurement-driven environment, I think it was 65% of them in a complex sale had the mindset of a challenger. Only 8% of them had the mindset of a relationship builder, and then, so on and so forth. So your organizations have really had to shift. And the good news is relationship-based salespeople can develop skills to challenge. They have to be rewarded for it, and you have to be actually willing to have customers walk away rather than constantly chasing after them. Anyways, I'm talking a lot here, Mark, but that whole challenger sale is the response in my mind to procurement. It's the way to go, a best practice, and it makes a difference and can help organizations succeed. But it's a challenging environment. Tough to be a salesperson.
Yeah, could you give us a 30-second overview of the challenger sale?
Yeah, sure. So the relationship sale, I'll go to the relationship first because that's where most organizations hire, and the mindset. I want somebody who builds good relationships. And so somebody who builds good relationships is, what do you need? They devote a lot of time across the organization. They're there to service customer needs. And then the mindset is, If the customer, they're trying to minimize tension with the customer. And so if the customer has a price objection, well, hey, I like what you've got, but I don't like your price. The response to reduce tension is, well, let me see what I can do at head office to try and get you a better price. Okay, so it's focused on the relationship with the customer. At the other end, the challenger is there to actually create value with the customer by actually creating tension. So they actually are doing the exact opposite thing. And the tension is not in any way treating the customer with a lack of respect, but it's actually raising the temperature of the conversation and not buying into, the customer. So the customer says, I really like what you've got, but, I want to, what's your price? Tell me your price. And the challenger response is, hey, I know price is important, but before I'm going to get into that, I really want to make sure I understand your needs. Is that okay? That we have a mutual understanding of value. And if a customer said, no, I just want the price, then, you literally, a challenger would be, I don't know if we're going to be a good fit because we're not going to be the lowest price in town. So, but in order to effectively communicate our value and for me to really be able to let you know what we've got and whether we're a good fit, I really, truly need to understand what your needs are. So, with your permission, I'd like to get into that. So just keep coming back to that and don't accept the price, objection, the price request until you really got that. And so you're always educating the customer. You're always bringing something new. You've got a good challenger sales happening when at the end of the meeting, the customer says, I learned a lot in that meeting I didn't know.
Yep.
That's the challenger sale at its best.
Yeah, nice. So I've also seen similar ones, mastering the complex sale. And then in the creative space, you often see people doing value conversations, which are very similar to that.
Yeah. They're all connected, and I think the key kind of focus of the challenger sale that really does change it and gives it a slightly different twist is just the word challenger, walking in with that mindset. Because even relationship people want to have a very good discussion about value, right? They want to, but procurement teams are not there to have a good discussion necessarily, right? And often they'll short circuit, they use bully tactics, things like that. So you have to elevate your game and be willing to face them head on. And it's like being on two sides of an opposing football team in some ways. Yep. It's a different kind of relationship.
Nice. So what do you think the biggest problem in pricing is today? As you're walking away from the industry, you're like, oh, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that problem anymore.
Yeah, I think probably, it's unique to consulting and to my life and to pricing solutions, which I am still engaged in and a part of, is the time constraints that clients have, their ability to focus and bring attention to a problem, to an innovation. Many of our clients have amazing innovations, in healthcare and technology. There's so much going on, but they're moving so fast that they don't have the time to really sort out what is the worth of this. And I'll give you an example. We've got one client. They're a Wall Street company. They developed an amazing platform, and they, thought the value was one thing. And, based on doing just 5 customer interviews, we were able to identify that what they thought drove the most value was actually the third most significant value driver. There were 2 other things above it they were completely unaware of. So it's kind of scary when you think about launching technology, in today's fast environment without getting that homework done. But clients they're stretched and don't have time. And so that's the biggest challenge. And that's the thing I won't miss, Mark, is that, sense of, we're just, we're so stretched, we're in such a rush. So the inability to maybe invest the time and stuff, and that's not the client's fault in any way. It's just the nature of the beast in today's market, fast moving environment.
Yeah. What seems so funny about what you just said is it isn't that hard for the client to go talk to 5 potential customers and figure out where the value is before you go spend $1 million on marketing programs or positioning or whatever you're going to do. And I could see them saying, I don't have time to do a big research project. Yeah. Great. Don't do it. Go talk to 5 people, would you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I agree. I think that's really, really critical. And, sometimes, like, I think the value of, in that particular example I gave of us doing the interviews is we're just a little more distanced from things. We've got a bit of we're not biased. We don't have a vested interest. So I do think engaging a third party to move fast and get an unbiased kind of third party point of view is very valuable, particularly with innovation. The person who's created the innovation is so in love with it and owns it at such a deep level and is so typically unopen to really hearing, about it in a certain way. And then customers are often, when they meet with a company, they're biased and they have a point of view. They may not share everything because they may say, oh, well, it's, immediately they're negotiating, that kind of thing. So there's time and place to bring in third parties, even if it's for 5 interviews, as you say, or whatever, right? But what's your process, your repeatable process for getting a good market-based information on a repeatable, time-efficient, cost-effective way? I think that's a really important question in today's fast-moving environment.
Another consulting friend of mine, he usually starts out his engagements by asking the client, hey, list in order the top 10 reasons people buy your product.
Yeah.
And then he goes out and does conversations and comes back and says, yeah, you weren't even close.
Right.
Here we go.
You got it. Exactly. And that is so hugely valuable for the client. It creates such value in such a short period of time, Mark. It's amazing. And that's the part that I love and that I will miss a great deal, that I do miss on a kind of daily basis, is those ahas and insights that really bring, value to the client in terms of honoring what they have built, what they've developed, rewarding them for those things.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, so you've done the impossible. You built a consulting firm and then sold it. So what was it like, let's say 3 years before you actually sold it? Did you have to restructure the company or say, look, I want to plan on building it this way so that it's sellable?
No, so I had a great team in place, Mark. And so my point of view right from the start was, we're going to go to market with the company. We'd had offers over the years from, various companies and stuff like that. So I knew there were people interested in us. And when I went to market, the market had changed. The players who were interested had changed. But no, I didn't change a thing, actually. I just went to market with, what I knew was a good company with good people who could create repeatable value, and found a buyer that, would value what we had and what we could bring to the table. And so, I got really lucky. I found a really, really good acquirer, which was Iris, which is a global marketing services agency out of the UK. And so they acquired us. And then over the next 3 years, we went through the integration process, and it has worked very well.
Nice. Okay, let's change topics pretty dramatically. I want to talk about mindfulness for a second.
Sure, I love it. I love that topic.
So I started maybe 3 or 4 years ago. How long have you been doing this?
So I've been practicing meditation, mindfulness for about 10 years now.
And how does it change you when you started, and why do you keep doing it?
Yeah, so I took a course called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, MBSR. It was developed by a gentleman named John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And it was kind of the first empirically proven methodology for helping people handle stress more effectively. And so that's why I took it. I was too stressed out and needed to figure out how to, handle it more effectively. So I took this course. It was actually even paid for by the Canadian healthcare system because it's proven to have such a positive impact. And I took that, and I found it helpful, but I just kind of, took 5 minutes every day, did a little bit of meditation, and over time it grew. And then I started reading more, and then I started, going to some different classes and stuff like that. And it just kind of grew very gradually for me, Mark. And And then, to the point where now I practice about 20 minutes a day, and I started a couple different meditation groups during COVID to try and help people cope with it and get together. And now I'm teaching MBSR. I actually am getting certified, and on next Wednesday, I'm kicking off with a group of 24 people embarking on the 8-week course, teaching them. So very,
Nice.
yeah, it's something I'm really, really happy about.
So I love meditation in the following sense. I think what it taught me was to react less and respond more, right? To be more careful or cautious or slower to react to things, which has just had an immense impact in the things that go on around me. But
Yeah.
I want to apply that to business, or let's apply it to pricing professionals.
Sure.
Right? Imagine that you're trying to build a relationship inside a company. Instead of reacting, you're thoughtfully responding. And so this just seems to me to be a practice that we ought to try to convince more pricing people to go do.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have at Pricing Solutions, we do an annual conference, and we've got about 30 senior execs that come to it. And I think last year I mentioned I was doing this course, and they all said, "Well, we all want you to teach us next session, Paul." So I think they're open to it, and I think everybody can really benefit from it. And I think that pricers who are dealing with a lot of cross-functional departments, finance, marketing, sales, operations, you've got a lot of responsibility, but sometimes not as much control as you'd like. The whole concept that you're saying of responding rather than reacting is bang on. That's exactly what a pricer needs to sort out. How do I do that?
Yeah. And so how do you think meditation actually does that? I'm not an expert by any means. I practice, I studied a little bit for fun, but
Yeah.
I don't get this stuff.
Yeah, well, it's it's a pretty big field, but I will say that it's really about being in the present moment, in my mind, Mark. And so how do I be in the present moment? How do I actually be more alert to what's really happening and seeing it? Walking into a meeting, am I walking in with just my point of view and what I want to get, kind of through the organization? Or am I open to really listening, hearing, kind of making sure I discern what's being said, and then being able to perhaps even come to a more creative solution, and sharing my point of view. So it's really, I think of it as an open mind, Mark, I really do. And that I think that has great value in terms of your ability to respond and be effective and add value and be creative and all those kinds of things. You have to make a decision as well. But hey, why not take in as much as we can and then respond accordingly? So,
yeah, it's actually kind of funny because I agree with you. It does feel like it opens your mind. It feels like you start paying attention more to what's going on around you. And yet the entire mindfulness practice is thinking about what's going on inside me. It just feels so odd.
Yeah. Well, so you can do mindfulness in many ways. So you could do mindfulness of walking, mindfulness of eating, mindfulness of brushing your teeth. There's all sorts of practices. And so it's actually, how do I bring moment to moment awareness to anything I'm doing? And so meditation is a period where we typically sit down, we actually tune in, we might close our eyes, we might focus on our breath, things like that, right? Which are very internal, you're right. The breath is a great thing because it's eternal, it's ever present, it's happening all the time, and it's always in the present moment. But we can bring that, and the whole point of meditation is then to take that out and bring that to our lives and be in the present moment rather than lost in thoughts about the past or worries about the future. There's a place for thinking about the future, there's a place for thinking about the past, but probably not nearly as much as we all do it.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fabulous answer, because if you can focus on your breath, you could focus on anything.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly.
So Paul, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so P Hunt, P-H-U-N-T, at pricingsolutions.com is the best way, Mark.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Episode 91, all done. Would you please leave us a review? These are very valuable to us. And P. Longy01 once wrote for us, gold in every episode. Mark's informed, insightful, no-nonsense approach to pricing is both educational and practical. And he complements this with interesting and experienced guests. Each episode provides immediate, actionable insights and learnings. Also, don't forget to join our community, free community at championsofvalue.com. That's where we publish everything I publish for free, the memes, the blogs, the videos, the podcasts. And if you have any questions or comments about this podcast or about pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.